We all tell stories, stories about who we are, stories about what we stand for, stories about why we did what we did. I had no choice. I did the best I could. I was right, just unlucky. But the most dangerous story of all is the one you tell yourself without realizing it's a story. The quiet, invisible narrative that forms in the background of your mind. The one that slowly edits reality to protect your ego, keep you comfortable, and justify decisions that are silently sabotaging your future. This isn't about you sitting down and deciding to lie. This is about self-deception. It works underneath your awareness. Your mind adjusts the story before the truth even reaches your conscious thinking. It reshapes your memory of what happened. It softens your responsibility. It upgrades your intentions. It converts obvious warning signs into probably nothing. The result? You get to feel consistent. You get to feel like a good, reasonable, intelligent person, even when your decisions are leading you somewhere you don't want to go. Humans have always struggled with the unknown. In ancient times, when thunder shook the sky or disease spread through a village, people didn't know about atmospheric electricity or viruses. They created explanations. The gods are angry, this land is cursed, someone performed a ritual against us. These stories weren't just superstition. They were psychological survival mechanisms. The mind would rather hold a false explanation than no explanation at all. That mechanism never went away. Today the questions are different, but the process is the same. Why didn't this relationship work out? Why didn't I get that promotion? Why is my business struggling? Why am I not as healthy, wealthy, or successful as I thought I'd be by now? When those questions arise, your mind doesn't sit and wait patiently for objective data. It rushes in to fill the vacuum, and it often fills it with stories that protect you from feeling pain. This inner conflict between uncomfortable facts and comforting stories is what psychologist Festinger called cognitive dissonance, the tension of holding two conflicting beliefs at the same time. I see the numbers dropping, but I'm a competent leader. I feel unhappy in this relationship, but I'm not someone who fails at love. I know this habit is destroying me, but I'm a rational person who can stop whenever I want. Your brain cannot stand that tension. So it does something clever. It doesn't fix the situation, it rewrites the story. Daniel Kahneman once said that your mind is not a logic processor, it is a story processor. It is constantly creating a narrative that feels coherent, even if it's not accurate. The more something threatens your identity, the more your mind bends reality to protect you. This isn't just theory, it shows up in real experiments. In the famous Festinger and Carl Smith study, participants did a mind-numbing task for an hour, literally turning pegs on a board. Afterward, they were asked to tell the next person that the task was enjoyable. Some were paid $20 for this lie. Others were paid just $1. Now, logically, you would expect the ones paid more to justify the lie more strongly. But the opposite happened. The participants paid just $1 actually started believing the task was enjoyable. They changed their own memory of the experience. Why? Because lying for $1 felt wrong. I'm not the kind of person who lies for $1. So the mind changed the belief to reduce the discomfort. Maybe it was sort of interesting. They didn't know they were doing this. They weren't consciously choosing to lie to themselves. Their mind quietly sacrificed reality in order to protect its internal image of being a decent person. That's self-deception in scientific form. Dan Ariely's research revealed another important distortion called the IKEA effect. When you build something yourself, even if it is wobbly and imperfect, you value it more than something better that you didn't build. You've probably experienced this with a piece of furniture, a document, a logo, a system at work, anything you personally put effort into. This doesn't stop at furniture. You fall in love with your business ideas because you built them. You defend your routines because you constructed them. You overvalue your own strategies, your own frameworks, your own plans simply because you made them. And that emotional attachment makes it extremely hard to admit when they aren't working. Now combine that emotional attachment with something called escalation of commitment, a concept explored by Barry Stahl. Once you've invested time, money, effort, or emotion into something, you feel an internal pressure to keep going, even when the evidence clearly says you should stop. You double down on a failing product. You pour more money into a losing trade. You stay in a career path that drains you. You continue in a relationship that hasn't been healthy for years. Deep down, you may already know the truth, but if you admit it, you'd have to say, all that time, all that energy, all those years were a mistake. And your ego whispers, we can't say that. We can't face that. So it creates a more comfortable story. I'm close. Things will turn around. Just one more push. This is where motivated reasoning enters the picture. You don't look at facts and then form beliefs. More often, you form beliefs and then go hunting for facts that support them. Your mind becomes a lawyer, not a judge. It stops asking, what is true? And starts asking, how can I defend what I already want to believe? Confirmation bias joins in. Instead of looking for disconfirming evidence, things that might prove you wrong, you only look for evidence that proves you right. You read articles that support your opinion. You talk to people who reassure you. You interpret neutral information in a way that backs your preferred narrative. And if someone confronts you with hard evidence that contradicts your story, the backfire effect can kick in. Instead of changing your belief, you double down. You defend yourself even more strongly. You become more convinced you're right, not less. Because now it's not just about the idea, it's about your identity. Finally, you tell yourself that others see things the way you do. That's the false consensus effect. Everyone knows this relationship is fine. Everyone agrees my business will eventually take off. Everyone understands my boss is the problem, not me. It feels better to imagine a silent majority on your side, even when that majority doesn't exist. Put all this together and you have a powerful self-deception machine working full-time inside your head. Stephen Gross calls this narrative repair. When the truth is too painful, your mind quietly edits it. You create softer, more flattering versions of events. You move certain details into the background. You shine a spotlight on your good intentions and dim the lights on your blind spots. The story still sounds reasonable. That's what makes it so dangerous. History is full of the cost of this. Take the later years of the Roman Empire. The signs of decline were clear. A weakening economy, overextension of the military, corruption spreading through the political system, increasing reliance on mercenaries, internal fragmentation. Yet many leaders clung to the belief that Rome was eternal. They insisted that the empire's greatness was intact, that any problems were temporary, that the system didn't need fundamental change. Pride and denial prevented course correction. The eventual collapse wasn't a sudden surprise. It was a slow-motion disaster made inevitable by decades of self-deception. Or consider Idi Amin's Uganda. Amin surrounded himself with yes men, silenced critics, and built a fantasy world where he was a wise, beloved leader. Even as the economy collapsed, intellectuals fled, and violence consumed the country. He publicly declared himself King of Scotland, issued absurd political statements, and insisted that Western leaders admired him. In reality, he was feared, isolated, and detached from the consequences of his actions. The deeper the chaos grew, the more grandiose the fantasy became. His internal narrative became a shield against reality, and a weapon against anyone who threatened it. The cost was not just his own downfall, but an entire nation's setback decades. When power and denial collide, reality becomes optional, until it isn't. Or consider the Bay of Pigs. President Kennedy's team had access to dissenting opinions. Some advisors had serious reservations. The plan was flawed. The chances of success were low. But inside the decision-making circle, groupthink took over. People didn't want to be the one to challenge the consensus. They didn't want to be disloyal, or negative, or difficult. So doubts went unspoken, risks were minimized, and the group persisted in a narrative of confidence until reality smashed into it on the Cuban shore. Chernobyl is another tragic example. Engineers on the ground saw warning signs. Procedures were bent or ignored. Safety systems were compromised. But the culture punished truth-telling. Admitting a serious risk meant admitting failure, incompetence, or technological weakness. So concerns were buried. Reports were softened. Dangerous tests were carried out anyway. The cost of that denial was not just money. It was lives, landscapes, and generations living in the shadow of radioactive fallout. The Challenger disaster followed a similar pattern. Engineers at Morton Thiokol warned that the O-rings in the booster rockets could fail at low temperatures. They expressed this clearly. The data was there. But managers at NASA, under schedule pressure and public expectations, chose to interpret the warnings optimistically. They convinced themselves the risk was acceptable. They filtered reality through the need to stay on track, and the shuttle broke apart in the sky, live on television. Self-deception doesn't only operate at national scales, it destroys companies too. Enron executives believed they were brilliant innovators. They believed they had discovered new ways to create value and outsmart the market. They told themselves their accounting tricks weren't tricks. They were just creative finance. As long as the stock price climbed, it reinforced the story. They built a culture where questioning the narrative was dangerous. Eventually, the truth caught up. Giant buildings with the Enron logo came down. Retirement funds vanished. Careers ended. WeWork's story is another extreme case. At its peak, it was described as a tech company changing the future of work. The story was electric. Community, disruption, vision, lifestyle. Behind the scenes, the business model was deeply flawed. Costs were huge, revenues unstable, governance chaotic. But when a charismatic founder believes his own myth, he can bring thousands along with him. Investors, employees, and the public bought the narrative. When it broke hard. FTX is more recent and hauntingly familiar. On the surface, a genius founder, a mission to earn to give, complex trading strategies, and an aura of inevitability. Underneath, lack of controls, conflicts of interest, misused funds. But what makes it truly dangerous is that the self-deception didn't just happen outwardly toward investors, it likely happened inwardly, inside the founder's own head. I'm different. I'm smarter. This will make sense in the long run. When you become the hero of your own myth, it gets harder and harder to see where the story stops and reality begins. And still, the most important battlefield for self-deception is your own daily life. In parenting, it sounds like, my child is fine, they're just going through a phase. While the grades drop, the behavior worsens, the distance grows. Facing the reality that your child needs help might trigger guilt, fear, or a sense of failure as a parent. So the story softens the concern. In health, self-deception sounds like, I'm not that unhealthy, I'm just big-boned. I'll start exercising when things calm down. You ignore the numbers on the scale, the blood work, the shortness of breath, the low energy. You don't want to see yourself as someone who let things slide. So the story becomes protective. It's not that bad. I can fix it later. In addiction, the narrative is brutally familiar. I can stop whenever I want. I'm under control. I'm just stressed. Everyone has a way to unwind. The cost grows, health, relationships, finances, reputation, but the story persists. I'm not like those people. I'm different. That illusion delays serious change until things are far more damaged than they needed to be. The question then is simple and difficult. How do you break this? Psychology offers more than just diagnosis. It offers a partial cure. Claude Steele's self-affirmation theory gives us a preventive tool. Steele found that when people are given the chance to affirm their core values, they become less defensive when confronted with threatening information. In other words, when your identity feels secure, you don't need to twist the truth to protect it. If you deeply remind yourself, I value honesty, I care about growth, I want to be a good parent, I value courage, then when someone says, you made a mistake here, your brain doesn't interpret it as you are a worthless person. It hears, here is a place where you can live your values more fully. You become more able to admit error because your self-worth is not entirely tied to being right. In experiments, people who wrote briefly about a core personal value before receiving harsh feedback were more likely to accept the feedback, more open to changing their behavior, and less likely to become defensive. They didn't crumble when they heard bad news because their identity had a stable foundation. You can apply this in your life with a very simple ritual. Pick one value that genuinely matters to you: honesty, family, mastery, kindness, responsibility, faith, creativity. Spend 2 or 3 minutes writing about why that value matters and a time you lived it out. Then add one sentence. This value is part of who I am, and it is bigger than any single mistake or failure. You are reminding your mind, even if I admit I was wrong in this situation, I am still myself. I am still worthy. I still have a core that is intact. That kind of self-affirmation makes it psychologically safer to face uncomfortable facts, because those facts no longer threaten your entire sense of self. But even with prevention, self-deception will still slip in. You need a practical system to detect and correct it. That's where a JPIW-style reality check comes in, a 3-step process designed to cut through your stories. The first step is the 0-day cost test. Imagine that today is the first day you are seeing this situation. Forget how long you've been in the relationship. Forget how many years you've worked at the job. Forget how much money you've already put into the project. Forget the sunk energy, the history, the story. Ask yourself, if this were offered to me fresh today, knowing what I know now, would I say yes? Would you sign up for this partnership again? Would you accept this position again? Would you launch this same product again? Would you buy this stock or this property again at its current state? If the honest answer is no, then the only thing keeping you there is the story, not the opportunity, not the future prospects, the story. The second step is the narrative flip. Here you bring your self-deception into the light deliberately. On one side of a page, write the comforting version you've been telling yourself. I stay because they will change. I'm still at this job because I'm being responsible. I'm continuing with this idea because I'm persistent. I don't confront this issue because it's not the right time. On the other side, write the uncomfortable version you've been avoiding. I stay because I'm afraid of starting over. I'm still here because I'm scared of the job market. I'm continuing this idea because I don't want to face that I chose poorly. I don't confront this issue because I'm afraid of conflict. The second column is rarely flattering, but it is usually closer to reality. Writing it down doesn't magically solve the situation, but it strips the illusion. It's like cleaning a foggy mirror. You start to see your face again. The third step is the trusted auditor. This is someone, or sometimes something, that can look at your situation without your emotional baggage. A mentor, a wise friend, a therapist, a coach, or even a carefully structured journal prompt or AI assistant. You present the situation stripped of its narrative. Just the facts. Here is my job, my pay, my responsibilities, my stress level, my health, my performance. Here is my relationship, what actually happens day to day, what is said, what is done. Here is my business, the numbers, the clients, the trend. You ask them one question. If this was your life, or your child's life, or your best friend's life, what would you advise? It's amazing how quickly clarity appears when the story is removed. When it's no longer your investment, your 5-year relationship, your career pride, just a human with certain conditions and options. You might not like the answer. You might not act on it immediately, but you will have something extremely rare, a view of your life that is not contaminated by your own self-deception. True practical intelligence is not perfection. It is not a life without mistakes. That's fiction. Real practical intelligence is the ability to see when you are starting to lie to yourself and to gently, firmly pull yourself back to reality. It is the willingness to say, I was wrong, sooner rather than later. It is the courage to walk away from something that no longer serves you, even when you've invested a lot. It is the strength to let go of a flattering story in exchange for a truthful one. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge, the quiet confidence that says, I already see clearly, when in fact the lens is distorted. If this conversation helped you recognize even one place where you might be deceiving yourself, pause and honor that. Awareness is the first and hardest step. Take a moment after this video to write down one story you've been telling yourself that might not be fully true. Then apply the 0-day cost test, perform the narrative flip, and if you can, share the situation with a trusted auditor. If this framework gave you clarity, like this video, and share it with one person who needs to hear it, someone you care about who might be stuck in a story that's no longer serving them. And in the comments, if you're willing, answer this question honestly. What is the most expensive self-deception lie you've ever told yourself? If this video gave you something valuable, Please like, share, and subscribe. Together, we're building a world where wisdom is practical, accessible, and life-changing. JPIW New York, Broom for the Brain. See you in the next episode.